Welcome back, Valiant Warriors. Today we have an extremely special episode for you. The one and only Heather Antos right here, ready to, well, just be bothered by us and see what nonsense we have for. It's going to be awesome.
I'm regretting this now.
All of. But as you know, the senior editor at Valiant, and we just got a lot of questions for you. So let's just dive right into it.
Sweet.
Okay. So, well, actually, do you want to maybe just give like a little bit of background about yourself? Just kind of let some people know that might not know you as well.
Sure.
How you got involved with Valiant.
Yeah, so I'm Heather Antos. I'm senior editor at Valiant. So I've been in the comics industry professionally for about 7 years now. I first started at Marvel working on a couple small titles, Star Wars, Deadpools, you might have heard of them. Co-created Gwenpool while I was there, done some work with Image, Redlands, Bitterroot, Injection, and Bog Bodies, which actually is on sale today as of the day that we're recording this. So check that out. But I've been with Valiant for about 1.5 years now. I got hired in as an editor, was working on the Livewire and Quantum and Woody series. Robert Myers brought me in before he departed for Oni. We miss you dearly, Robert, if you're watching. And now I am a senior editor, and I'm working on titles like Exo Manowar, Shadow Man, Savage, The Final Witness, and a bunch of other really cool stuff that I can't talk about.
Ooh. I like the sound of that.
We were really excited, everyone at Comic Watch, when we saw the promotion happen and everything. I noticed you were promoted with Lisa Hawkins into that senior editor role. I was wondering if you could maybe talk about y'all's role together and if y'all kind of have plans on what y'all want to work together, y'all's goals or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of plans and goals that, again, we can't really talk about. But, you know, what Lisa and I really love about the Valiant universe is how connected it is, you know, and especially with how young it is. You know, it doesn't have the 80-year history that, you know, your Marvel or DC does, which means there's so much more room to explore. And there's so many new toys to play with that we have yet to even discover within the universe, you know, and there's something that's very, very, very exciting about that. You know, we don't necessarily have the same restrictions that a character like Spider-Man or Batman does. You know, we can really develop these characters to the point where they break and might not come back as the good guy always, which is, you know, it's intimidating, right? Like, because we always say at Valiant, like, status quo means something. You know, if a character dies, they're dead. That's it. You know, there's no retcons, there's no reboots or things like that. And it's something we take very, very seriously. And working with such a small group of passionate creators, where we really are excited about the stories that we're building and planning out for you.
Yeah, definitely. It sounds like you have like a great grasp of the history of Valiant and kind of what these characters are bringing to it. But looking ahead, is there something that, you know, is there a kind of something in the office or, you know, talking with creatives that's got you really excited for this direction that Valiant's headed in now?
I think what has me so excited, and one of Valiant's core themes, is the consequence of the responsibility of power. You know, we talk about all the time in comics, there's a saying, don't know if you've heard of it, with great power there must also come great responsibility, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we're familiar.
So rarely do we see the burden of that responsibility explored, and also the consequence of that burden. You know, there's a weight to being that hero that the world relies on. And there's a dark path that you can see with that, and Valiant gets to explore that, and that's something that I'm really, really excited that, you know, the publisher and sales team is really letting us embrace and explore with these characters. And we're doing that with different genres, and we're doing that with new IP, and pairing up characters that we've never seen paired up together before, and It's really, really exciting. And I can't wait until, due to quarantine, I can't wait till things are back up running full steam and we can start, really getting the train on the tracks to let you guys see all this too and get this stuff announced so I can talk in more than just broad, vague terms.
We'll definitely keep an eye out. So, it's really cool. There's some of the things that you mentioned. So how does having all of these uncharted waters, how does that affect your role as an editor? Like, what are some of the challenges you face when you're getting together to work on a new project?
So I always call it the keeper of the keys, right? As an editor or senior editor at Valiant, my job is to protect the core of the characters, the core brand identity of the company, and make sure those are respected and encouraged and that everyone has the same vision, right? And for, decades long established characters like your Spider-Man or Batman, everyone knows these characters, right? Everyone knows exactly, Spider-Man's always a good guy. Batman doesn't use guns, except in films. But some video games, but we're not going to talk about that. But with Valiant, again, because these characters are so new, again, there's so much left to explore and define. And because what we're exploring is the burden of that responsibility, that doesn't mean that Bloodshot never kills or that Bloodshot always kills. There's a little more nuance to it, which is a huge challenge and is very, very difficult to do. But I think you can also explore and tell very impactful and very powerful stories because of that.
I can dig it. I can definitely dig that.
It feels like there's this vision for Valiant that's happening right now. And we're seeing that with a lot of, these core fundamental characters making their return with EXO and the new Shadow Man that's coming soon. And there's been a lot of teasers for a lot of other stuff. Carpenter, just Ninjak. I mean, there's so many. I wanted to see if you could maybe speak about that vision and the importance of these core characters kind of making their return to the forefront of Valiant.
I mean, you said it. There are core characters. They are our tentpoles, and it's always sad to see a run end. Matt Kent's EXO run that ended last year. That was 27 issues, I think, 26. That's no small feat, and that's something to be, commended.
For sure.
And it's sad to see that end, but it's also really exciting to bring in a new creative team to explore and tell a different side of that coin. Again, very intimidating, right? It's like Donny Cates following Jason Aaron's Thor. I don't envy that. That's not, that's not a position. Nick Spencer after Dan Slott's Spider-Man, love it or hate it. That's that was a very impactful run, and it's the same thing with these characters, but especially with characters like Harbinger, right? Like Peter Stanchek, Colin King with Ninjak, who've been off the table for so long. I feel like the expectations are beyond what anyone can comprehend. So you're hearing it from me. We're taking these very, very seriously. We know these are characters that you love and adore and really, really care about, but we also want to make sure that what we're bringing you is something you have never seen before in Valiant, but also you've never seen before in a Marvel or DC book.
I can dig that. You can definitely dig that. So with that being said, is there any characters you would say you feel maybe a little bit more close to than others? When you're a parent, you're not supposed to pick favorites, but let's be real, there's always going to be favorites. So do you have any that you might want to, any insight out there you might want to share with us?
Oh, for sure. I mean, day one at Valiant, I walked in and I was like, who's got Quantum and Woody? Who's got Shadow Man? They're mine. I will fight to the death for these guys. For anyone who knows my publishing history, I worked on the Deadpool line for years and years and years and years. And slapstick, thank you. Slapstick comedy and that sort of fun, bizarre, grounded, but you still care about these characters. It's something, I have a lot of experience in, I really enjoy doing. And I've you know, I've read the past series. You can see, oh, this wall. You can see it back there. I'm a huge fan of that work. And, you know, I knew right away, day one, I want to bring in Chris Hastings. You know, what we had on Gwenpool, we had so much fun with. Ryan Brown is an artist that I've loved for years and have always enjoyed working with together. And, you know, this series has been like some of the most fun I have ever had in comics, taking these two wacky, bizarre characters. But as an example of what I said before, flipping things on the head, you know, what we've done with this run of Quantum and Woody is, you know, normally in the past, Eric has always been team leader and he's the one calling the shots, and Woody is the slouch. And we kind of spun that on its head for this series. And it's been a lot of fun to, you know, kind of tip the box over and see what comes out.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you kind of point to these two distinct genres in like the slapstick comedy and then Shadow Man with horror.
Yeah.
Like those interests, you know, people don't think that they go in hand like they do, but they really work in tandem. But I think it gives an insight into what Valiant's doing with this, with a focus on genre storytelling. In that, you know, if you're looking for a more comedic series, then you can go Quantum and Woody, or if you're looking for horror, then you have Shadow Man. There's all these elements of the Valiant universe. I wanted to see if you could kind of talk about some of the challenges you see as an editor in keeping these distinct genre storytelling approaches with a cohesive view of the Valiant universe.
Honestly, it's not that difficult. You know, so long as you and your creative team have a really strong understanding of the genre, you know, and like Chris Hastings and slapstick comedy, obviously, you know, I don't have to tell him what to do with Quantum and Woody. Cullen Bunn on horror, Shadow Man, I don't need to tell him what to do with horror. No one does horror like Cullen Bunn. So when you have a team of creatives that you can trust to know their genre and know what they're doing and trust them with that, then for me as an editor, it's all about just making sure that they understand the rules of the universe and what we have planned. You know, if Colin is going to touch on things that might be covered in like Eric and Shinhara's foray with Shadow Man, then it's up to me to, you know, keep him in check. But when it comes to the rest of the stuff, you know, like I have my comforts in horror and slapstick comedy. Lisa, you know, I cannot imagine a better casting than her working on Bloodshot. You know, she worked on so many of the best classic 90s comics. Like she worked on 90s X-Men, you know.
Hey, that's a pretty big notch on your belt.
Right. Like, and Bloodshot is, when I think of like a 90s classic superhero, Bloodshot is definitely one of those guys. And so like she gets it and she knew exactly what to do with it. And so I think it really comes with understanding where your core creative strengths are and just knowing where that fits within the universe.
Very cool. Awesome. I would have thought it's like it's a larger challenge to kind of navigate all of these different waters, but that's an interesting role to find yourself in. Ken?
Yeah. So, well, speaking of Bloodshot, Nick and I were both lucky enough to catch it in theaters, and we loved it.
Oh, I'm jealous. You got to see it in theaters.
Yes.
I didn't even get to see it in theaters.
Oh,
we were like right there.
Yeah, like it was like the next day. It was like boom, shut down, like by the skin of her teeth. But is there anything about, say, just, you know, the timing was terrible, but it's still like a big thing for Valiant. So like going forward, you know, how does that excite you? Like, what are you looking forward to? Like, say, like with Harbinger, I know that's in talks right now, or maybe Bloodshot 2. Like, what's that atmosphere like for you?
You know, this again, it's not my first rodeo getting to work on comics that are associated with, you know, with Hollywood, but this is the first time I've been a part of something that I think was a company first and like very, very sorry, my dog is making a cameo. I've been on camera all day. She's like, Mom, get off.
Totally welcome to the show anytime.
Yeah.
But it you know, Valiant, the comics office is like 20 people. Like that's it. It's a very, very small group of people. And so to have a movie starring Vin Diesel, right? And Guy Pearce and Sam Heughan, like out in theaters, is a huge deal, you know, and we're in New York, and like to walk down Times Square and there's, you know, there's Vin Diesel, there's the Valiant logo, like that's so exciting. And despite all the quarantine and COVID going on in the world, like we were still #1 at the box office opening weekend.
Yeah.
When it went direct digital, we were the #1 streaming film. That's not nothing, especially when Disney Pixar's, you know, Onward just came out to theaters that same time, you know.
Yeah.
So did it do as well as everyone had hoped? No, of course not. There's a global pandemic going on. But you know, it opens up so many more possibilities, and there's a lot of stuff that's being worked on and talked on behind the scenes. You know, I know we announced a partnership with Blowfish Studios with video games, and that's where I have to stop talking. I can't talk anymore about what's coming from there. But like that's another huge thing. You know, it's all building, and this is just the beginning. And I cannot wait until you guys see what we've been working on, and it's, you know, we can only go up. It's great.
Yeah, I'm so ready for that Shadow Man remaster. Like, I'm ready for that. I'm really interested in your experience that you have with these characters and their relation to, you know, their larger forms of media, like their film adaptations and stuff, because that's, you know, what draws a lot of attention to these characters and these properties in this day. We've talked with Greg and Emily a little bit about, you know, what they feel makes Valiant special. And I wanted to see kind of in your experience with a larger presence in the industry, kind of what you feel makes Valiant stand out in all of that.
I think it's that we are a universe of consequence.
Interesting.
You know, like there's nothing wrong with the Marvel and DC method of you tell a story and then the toys go back in the box, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, Secret Empire happened, and yes, Captain America was Hell Hydra, but we all knew he was going to be a good guy at the end of it. Death of Wolverine, we all knew he was going to come back eventually. And that's not the point of those stories, right? The point of those stories is the journey and the experience and how that character grew emotionally. That's the point of those stories.
Yeah.
Not the where they end up, but the how they get there. And Valiant being a universe of consequence, it's about not only the how they get there, but where they end up, because where they end up has big consequences for the rest of the universe. You know, life and death of Toyo Harada just happened. And not spoiling anything for anyone who hasn't read it, but if you haven't read it, why haven't you read it? Get off this right now and go read it, because it's really freaking
Pause,
good.
come back.
But like, if there's a series that has consequence and a huge impact on the universe, you know, that one has major implications. And we're going to feel those shockwaves through the rest of the universe for whoever knows how long. You know, it's I like to say it's the Valiant universe is like a pond. You put a pebble in it and the ripples take off, right? But then those ripples are going to hit other ripples and create other ripples. It's the same thing. And it's really cool to be working in a universe that isn't created in a vacuum.
Wow.
I can dig that. I can definitely dig that. So with that being like kind of the mindset, I know you have to be a little bit tight-lipped on some of the stuff coming around the bend, but is there maybe is there a way you could maybe give us a little insight on what might be coming around the bend that we haven't heard? I know when we had Greg on, he was talking about he somewhat talked about how Colin Bunn was saying like Shadow Man XO might be a thing, maybe XO or Shadow Man Punk Mambo. Something along those lines, maybe.
Something along those lines, maybe.
Ooh, Ken's always pushing for more information.
I'm sold on the Shadow Man Punk Mambo. I think it's gonna happen. So I just want to be like, I told you guys. But if it doesn't, it doesn't. If it does, it does. Either way, you guys are gonna keep pumping out quality content. But one thing I did want to pick your brain a little bit about is, you know, coming from the background of doing like Image and Marvel, you know, that's a really good mix of skills. Do you feel like that makes you like kind of like uniquely suited to work at Valiant, or like how has that kind of changed your perspective from say somebody who maybe had just done Valiant or had just done Marvel but hadn't been on like, you know, the more indie side with Image? Like, how do you think that what unique strengths do you think that brings?
Yeah, I think what I have gained by working in both like the literally the biggest comics that you can put out, right? Um, I've had the experience of creating new characters in established universes like Gwenpool and Dr. Aphra. And, those characters have the benefit of, well, people love Star Wars, so they're going to give it a try anyway, right? People love Marvel, so they're going to give it a try anyway. An Image, it's, you got to put a lot more grit into those books. You got to, the self-promotion usually with an image series is not the character. Not really the concept, but it's the creators, and it's all about, does that cover sell? Is that eye catching? Is that going to catch someone's attention? Does that log line, does that one sentence hook, is that enough to get someone's attention? And so coming from the background of knowing this is how a big two company does a publishing plan, and plans out events and plans out series and plans down the line 2, 3, 4, 5 years at a time. And this is how an independent creator owned develops a new character and a new concept that takes off. And bringing that to Valiant, getting to bring both those strengths, like it's a huge asset. And had I come to Valiant straight from Marvel, yeah, I would have been fine, but I don't think I would have had as many ideas or been as comfortable making the decisions that I have as I do now. Being an Image, you have to experiment, right, to stand out. Yeah. And it's stuff like that, which is how I got the idea to do the fashion covers with Livewire.
That was beautiful. Beautifully done, by the way.
Thank you.
So that's how that was inspired.
Yeah, that was me. It was the last arc, and I was like, can I do something weird? I have an idea. It's not kosher, but just like trust me. And that was the first time Valiant got an exclusive reveal on the Nerdist, and it was all because they just looked cool. And sometimes that's all you need, right? As a comic fan going to a store, sometimes you just see a cover and you're like, that looks cool. I don't know anything about it, but I'm gonna check it out. And there's nothing wrong with that. And so it's those sort of, I think, guerrilla creation skills that really come into handy.
Definitely. It kind of gets me excited to think about which fans are jumping into Valiant now because of how accessible these titles are and kind of what they mean for the future. Are there certain titles that you would recommend to somebody who just walked into a shop who is looking at a selection of Valiant titles?
Absolutely. I mean, you can never go wrong with the Valiant, the miniseries that Jeff Lemire and it was Jeff Lemire and Matt Kent, I think. Yeah. It was 2012, so it was well before my time at Valiant. But it's a great self-contained story that introduces you to, EXO and Bloodshot, Eternal Warrior, Geomancer, all the characters. And really introduces you to how they incorporate in the universe. And then if there's a character in that series that you really, relate to, then that's the series you then pick up and follow. So I highly recommend that. And then beyond that, my gateway drug into Valiant was Secret Weapons.
Ooh, nice.
That was the first Valiant book I ever read. And it really has like a 4 kids walk into the bank or Paper Girls, like that kind of vibe of, they're the outcasts of the outcasts, they're, Psyops are already underdogs in the Valiant universe. And then these are the rejected Psyops, the Psyops that didn't want them. And that book is truly about responsibility of power and what one does with it. And it's all about brotherhood. Like that book solely encapsulates, I think, everything that Valiant is about in such a heartwarming, fun story. And the art is just gorgeous too. Raoul Allen and Patricia Martin, like they're next level. They're so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. All right.
Go ahead.
You got a question, Nick?
Go ahead.
Okay, I thought you had one ready to go. But speaking of that, that is cool, especially dropping the secret weapons like that. That's an answer we haven't seen, and it does show that you do have like your own unique flavor. And so one thing that I've kind of noticed is like, say with like XO, right? It's a little bit more humorous than it would usually be. So like, was that like a conscious decision, or was that like like we're just gonna spice it up, like we're not gonna try to rehash what's done before, we're gonna try something new? Like what was like the process that went into like XO in particular, or really just kind of any of the books that you got coming up?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing when I came in was I don't want to do what's been done before. For Shadow Man, we have the new Cullen Bunn, John Davis Hunt horror Shadow Man, and I came in and I'm like, why hasn't this book ever been a horror series? Literally, his name is Shadow Man. Why doesn't he have horror powers? Like, why does he have shadow powers? His name is Shadow Man.
True.
And like the dude literally jumps back and forth essentially from hell and fights demons, and this isn't a horror book. Like I don't understand. And so like that was my reasoning there, truly, if you want to get
Amazing.
I like it. I'm 100% satisfied with that answer.
like I'm just like, it's like you have lemons, you have water. Where how has no one come up with lemonade yet? Like, why is this not,
That's true.
Yeah.
But for EXO, again, the stakes are very, very high, coming off a huge run, but we've seen EXO space superhero done to death. We've seen EXO, Conan the Barbarian and the Visigoth times done to death. We've seen him being, this sci-fi fantasy over and over and over again. And not to say there's nothing wrong with that. There are great stories to tell in that, and there have been and will continue to be. But we haven't really seen EXO deal with being a human in the 21st century. And there's a different level of adaptation and trauma, truly, that you would go through just adjusting to that. Let alone when I first realized, when I was given the series, the launch of the new #1, I really wanted to break down the character and like understand what makes this different from Conan, what makes this different from Thor, what makes this different from Iron Man, even, right? And the difference is with Thor, he has his hammer, right? That's his weapon, and it's an object. With Iron Man, Tony Stark has his suit that he built and is totally like a robot. He programs it and Jarvis, and like that's it. But Shinhara, I feel like we forget so often that she's a living, breathing thing. Eric isn't the hero. Shinhara and Eric make EXO. It's a partnership. It really is a duality, more so than anything else. And there's something that's really, really beautiful about that, because they are both creatures that have been taken from their homes, and all they truly, really know is each other. And there's something really, really powerful to explore in that. And so that was my idea behind this series, is really explore the relationship between Arik and Shinhara and what that means, and the consequences of one deciding they might not need the other.
Huh.
That's,
That's I don't know if I was ready for that answer, but I like that answer a whole lot.
So I know we're kind of closing in on our time. I don't want to keep you too long, but the Valiant fandom is something that I've never really witnessed before in comics. I'm somewhat new to the fandom coming in. The Valiant got me into it, and when we opened the show, we had so much support from fans sending posters to us, telling us, things that we need to be reading. So I wanted to see if you had a particular fan interaction that you thought kind of surmised what the Valiant fandom is and why it's so great.
I mean, the Valiant fandom community is truly a family. And I know everyone says this about all fandoms, right? They're all families, but like, oh my God, the Valiant, like, I've never seen fans fight their brothers and sisters in fandom as passionately you know, and bicker, but at the end of the day, we all still come together because it's the holidays and we love each other, and, you know, we want to be there for each other. But like, no, I mean, a personal fan experience for me is, so for anyone who doesn't know, I'm obsessed with penguins. I draw pop culture penguins all the time, post them on social media. And for Valiant's Hero of the Week, I did an exo penguin.
And it was amazing.
Oh, thank you. But I posted it, and a Valiant fan reached out to me and was just like, I'll buy it. If you haven't sold it, I would like to buy it off of you. I'm like, okay, cool. And I sent it out to him, and he then sent me back penguin salt and pepper shakers that he found and thought of me and just wanted to send me, which is just like the sweetest thing. You know, and when I started at Valiant, I was new. I was new to the universe and new to everything, just like everyone else is for the first time. And Valiant fans right away knew I loved penguins and started sending me like penguin drawings of the Valiant characters. And it's just like, it's very warm and welcoming, and they have each other's backs all the time, no matter what. And it really is just a beautiful community, even though you want to pull each other's hair out sometimes.
Such a good answer.
Exactly. I think that's a pretty accurate summarization of the fandom. But on that note, thank you for being with us. It has truly been a pleasure. Hopefully we'll have you on again sometime. And if you're watching, be sure to like, subscribe, follow. Also, check out Heather's Penguins, because I've seen them and they are great and hilarious and adorable. Until next time, stay valiant.
All right, take care.